The lecture hall felt wrong to Daniel Reed. Everything was too big. The chairs stood as tall as his chest, forcing him to climb into his seat like a child. The desk stretched wide enough to hold three of him side by side. Around the massive room, 30 different alien species shifted and whispered, their eyes constantly finding him in the back row. Daniel tried to focus on his datapad, but the stares never stopped. Some aliens had multiple eyes. Others had sensory organs he could not name. All of them watched the human with the same expression, nervous curiosity mixed with fear. Professor Hickstel clicked into the room on 6 insectoid legs. Her compound eyes glittered under the bright lights as she uploaded the day's material to the main display. The topic appeared in 12 different languages simultaneously. Introduction to Interstellar Ethics. Class, as you are aware, we have our first human student joining us this semester. Hickstel's mandibles moved in what Daniel had learned was a smile. Humans come from Earth, classified as a Class 9 death world. Their planet has killed more of its own inhabitants than any war in recorded galactic history. The whispers grew louder. A blob-like creature in the front row actually moved its desk away from Daniel's section. However, the professor continued, humans have proven themselves capable of civilized behavior. We welcome Daniel Reed to the Galactic Institute of Advanced Learning. Polite clicks, chirps, and hums filled the room. Daniel nodded his acknowledgement, feeling his face grow warm. He hated being the center of attention. Now then, before we begin, I must inform you all that we have one more student joining us today. Hickstel's voice dropped lower. This student requires special accommodation due to safety protocols. The room went silent. Daniel noticed a desk in the far corner he had not seen before. Metal barriers surrounded it on 3 sides, creating an isolation zone. Warning symbols marked the floor around it in bright yellow. Your classmate is a Drathkar. For those unfamiliar with the species, they are apex predators from a Class 10 death world. They are the only known species in the galaxy that actively hunts other sentient beings on their home planet. A Quillan student near Daniel made a high-pitched sound of distress. Others shifted toward the exits. The administration has installed proper safety measures. Please remain calm. The ground shook, not from an earthquake or station malfunction, but from footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that made the metal floor plates vibrate. The door at the back of the lecture hall opened. It was designed for large species, but even so, the creature that entered had to duck. Daniel watched, fascinated rather than frightened, as the Drathkar walked down the aisle toward the isolated desk. The being stood at least 8 feet tall. Black chitinous armor covered its entire body, plates overlapping like a biological tank. 6 eyes, arranged in 2 rows of 3, glowed with a dim red light. 4 arms ending in claws that could easily tear through steel moved with careful precision. A tail, thick as Daniel's torso, dragged behind it. Every single alien in the room pressed themselves against the walls or hid behind their desks. Some simply fled through the emergency exits. Within seconds, the class had shrunk from 30 students to 15. Daniel stayed in his seat. He tilted his head, studying the Drathkar's movement patterns. The creature moved like it was afraid of breaking something. Each step was calculated and controlled. The claws never fully extended. The Drathkar noticed Daniel watching. All 6 eyes focused on the human. It froze mid-step, clearly expecting the small creature to run like all the others. Daniel did not run. He pulled out his datapad and made a note about Drathkar's skeletal structure for his xenobiology assignment. Professor Hickstel's voice cracked slightly. This is Rask. He will be joining us for the semester. Please give him space and follow all safety protocols. Rask continued to his isolated desk, moving even more carefully now. He lowered himself into the reinforced seat, which groaned under his weight. The barriers around him hummed to life, creating an energy field that would contain any aggressive movement. The lecture began. Hickstal discussed the fundamental principles of interspecies interaction, respect, communication, and understanding biological differences. The irony of teaching this while half the class had literally run away from one of their classmates was not lost on Daniel. He took notes, occasionally glancing at Rask. The Drathkar sat perfectly still, focusing on the professor. His claws rested on the desk, retracted as far as they could go. One of his middle eyes kept drifting toward Daniel, then quickly looking away. Halfway through the lecture, Daniel realized something. Rask was alone. The isolation was not just physical. No one spoke to him. No one looked at him unless forced to. He existed in a bubble of fear. When Professor Hickstal wrote a complex equation on the display, Daniel saw Rask's eyes narrow in concentration. The Drathkar was clearly intelligent, engaged with the material, but he had no one to discuss it with, no study partners, no friends. Daniel knew that feeling. He had been the only human on the transport ship to this station. 3 months of isolation, of being the strange creature everyone avoided. But at least he had hope of connection. These aliens might fear him now, but they could learn otherwise. What hope did Rask have? He was built to inspire terror. The lecture ended early. Professor Hickstal announced a safety assessment required evacuation of the building. Daniel suspected it was because several students had filed complaints about sharing space with a Drathkar. Everyone rushed for the exits. Daniel gathered his materials slowly, watching as Rask remained seated. The Drathkar would wait for everyone else to leave first, probably a standard protocol he had learned after years of this treatment. Daniel made a decision. He walked toward Rask's isolation zone instead of the exit. The few remaining students gasped. Someone shouted a warning in a language Daniel did not understand. Rask's 6 eyes went wide, all 4 arms tensed, his tail stopped moving. Daniel stopped at the barrier. He held up his datapad. "Hey, you caught that last equation the professor wrote? My notes cut off halfway through, and I want to make sure I have it right for the homework." Rask stared at him. Seconds passed. The Drathkar's mandibles moved, but no sound came out at first. Finally, in a voice like gravel sliding down a metal chute, he spoke. "You are asking me about homework." "Yeah, you were paying attention and I saw you write something down. Just wanted to compare notes." "You are not afraid?" Daniel shrugged. "Should I be?" Rask had no answer for that. His claws slowly retracted further. "The equation, yes, I have it recorded." "Cool, can you send it to my datapad? Or does the barrier block signals?" "It blocks physical matter only. I can transmit data." Rask tapped his own device. A moment later, Daniel's datapad chimed with the incoming information. "Perfect, thanks." Daniel turned to leave, then paused. "See you next class." He walked out, leaving Rask sitting alone in his isolation zone, all 6 eyes fixed on the door through which the human had exited. For the first time in 12 years of education, someone had approached Rask voluntarily. Someone had asked for his help. Someone had said they would see him again. The Drathkar's claws retracted completely, something that only happened during deep sleep. But Rask was wide awake, replaying the interaction in his mind, trying to understand what had just happened. Daniel arrived early to the next lecture. He had done his research the night before, reading everything the Galactic database had on Drathkar physiology, culture, and history. Most of it painted them as monsters, unstoppable hunters, killers by nature. But buried in the academic papers, Daniel found something interesting. No Drathkar had ever attacked another sentient being outside their home planet. Not once in 200 years of galactic contact. They were feared for what they could do, not what they had done. The lecture hall was nearly empty when Daniel climbed into his seat. He chose the desk directly adjacent to Rask's isolation zone. The barriers between them glowed faintly, but Daniel could see through them clearly. Professor Hickstal entered 10 minutes later. She stopped when she saw Daniel's location. Her mandibles twitched nervously. "Mr. Reed, there are many other available seats. This one's fine. Good angle to see the main display." Other students filtered in. Each one noticed Daniel's position and moved to the opposite side of the room. By the time class started, Daniel and Rask occupied an entire quarter of the lecture hall by themselves. The lesson covered quantum mechanics and its applications to faster-than-light travel. Professor Hickstel wrote formulas across the holographic display, explaining how different species perceive the mathematical concepts differently based on their brain structures. Daniel took notes on his datapad. 15 minutes into the lecture, he finished transcribing a particularly complex equation and slid his datapad through the small gap at the bottom of the barrier. The device skidded across the floor and stopped near Rask's desk. Every alien in the room turned to stare. Professor Hickstel stopped mid-sentence. Rask looked down at the datapad like it was a bomb. Daniel pretended not to notice the reaction. He pulled out a backup stylus and started a new page of notes on a spare datapad he always carried. Rask's largest arm reached down slowly. His claws, each the size of kitchen knives, extended carefully. One claw tapped the datapad's screen. The message Daniel had typed appeared. "You missed this formula yesterday when the professor went too fast. Thought you might want to copy it for the homework." Rask read the message 3 times. His 6 eyes moved from the words to Daniel and back again. After a full minute of silence, he typed a response and slid the datapad back through the gap. "Why are you not afraid of me?" Daniel read the question, smiled slightly and typed back, "Should I be?" The datapad returned. "Every species fears Drathkar. This is natural. We are designed to be feared. Earth has lots of scary things. Bears that weigh 800 pounds. Sharks with teeth designed to rip flesh. Spiders whose venom melts your organs. Snakes that swallow prey whole. We learn to live with all of them. But those are not sentient. Some of them are pretty smart, actually. We studied them, understood them, respected them. Fear and respect aren't the same thing." The datapad slid back and forth between them throughout the rest of the lecture. Professor Hickstel tried to continue teaching but kept losing her train of thought. The other students whispered constantly, creating a background buzz of nervous energy. "I have never had a conversation this long with anyone," Rask wrote. "What do you mean? You've been in school for years, right?" 12 years of formal education. Most conversations last less than 5 minutes, usually just professors giving instructions. Other students do not speak to Drathkar unless required for assignments. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. 12 years, over a decade of complete social isolation. He typed carefully, "That sounds incredibly lonely." The response took longer this time. "Loneliness is not a concept my species acknowledges. We are solitary hunters. We do not require social bonds." "But you're not on your hunting grounds. You're here, learning, trying to be part of something bigger." No response came. Daniel glanced through the barrier and saw Rask sitting completely still, all 6 eyes fixed on the datapad screen. The lecture ended. Students fled as usual. Professor Hickstel made a point of reminding everyone about the upcoming group project, her eyes deliberately avoiding both Daniel and Rask. Daniel gathered his things slowly. He walked to the barrier and spoke aloud for the first time since their digital conversation began. "There's a study area in the library that's usually quiet. 3rd floor, east wing. If you want to compare notes on this quantum stuff, I'll be there after dinner." Rask's voice rumbled from behind the barrier. "You wish to study together?" "Yeah, 2 heads are better than 1, even if 1 head has 6 eyes." Daniel grinned at his own joke. "This is not advised. Administration discourages Drathkar from participating in social activities. They discourage it or forbid it." "Discourage? Then it's our choice." Daniel picked up both datapads. 3rd floor, east wing. around 1900 hours station time. He left before Rask could respond. That evening, Daniel sat in the library's study area with his materials spread across a human-sized desk. The chair was too small for a draft car, but the floor space was open. He worked through practice problems, checking his answers against the textbook. Footsteps shook the floor. Daniel did not look up. He heard the heavy breathing of a massive creature stopping at the entrance to the study area, heard the scrape of claws against metal, heard the hesitation. The quantum tunneling equation on page 47 makes no sense to me, Daniel said casually, still focused on his work. The professor skipped 3 steps in her explanation. Silence. Then, she assumed we understood the underlying principle of wave-particle duality. Right, but the textbook doesn't explain it clearly for either of our species' brain structures. More silence. Then the sound of a large body lowering itself to the floor. Rask sat down carefully, his armored back against the wall, his tail curled around his body. He pulled out his own datapad. Perhaps we can work through it together. Daniel looked up and smiled. That's what I was thinking. They worked in comfortable silence for over an hour. When one of them got stuck, the other offered suggestions. When neither understood something, they researched together. Other library visitors saw them and quickly left, but neither Daniel nor Rask cared. At one point, Rask asked, "Why do you do this?" "Do what?" "Choose to be near me. Risk your social standing. Other humans will arrive at this station eventually. They will judge you for befriending a Death Worlder." Daniel set down his stylus. My grandmother had a saying. She said you can judge a person's character by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. You're not a threat to me, Rask. You're just someone trying to learn, same as me. Why wouldn't I want to study with someone who actually understands this material? Rask's claws retracted fully. I do not understand humans. That's okay, we barely understand ourselves. Daniel returned to his work. Same time tomorrow. Yes, I would like that. It was the first time Rask had ever said those words to anyone. The dining hall stretched across 2 levels with tables designed for every known species in the galaxy. Crystalline chairs for the silicon-based quarks, liquid suspension tanks for the aquatic bellum, heated platforms for the cold-blooded velans. Despite the variety, everyone followed the same unspoken rule: stay away from the Drathkar. Rask always ate alone in the corner where the facility staff had installed reinforced furniture. His meals came pre-packaged because the serving drones refused to approach him. He consumed his food quickly, efficiently, without enjoyment, just fuel for his massive body. Daniel changed that routine on their 4th day of studying together. He walked into the dining hall during peak hours when every species crowded around their preferred food stations. The noise was incredible. Dozens of languages, clicking mandibles, humming vocal sacs, translated conversations overlapping through universal communicators. Daniel grabbed a tray of human-compatible food and made his way through the crowd. Conversation stopped as students noticed where he was heading. A Quillen server dropped an entire stack of plates. The crash echoed through the sudden silence. Daniel sat down at Rask's table without hesitation. He unpacked his lunch, a protein bar, some kind of pasta, and a fruit he had never seen before, but the nutrition label promised was safe for human consumption. Rask stared at him, all 6 eyes focused on the small human sitting across from him. "What are you doing?" "Eating lunch. You mind if I sit here?" "This section of the dining hall is designated for my exclusive use." "So we've got plenty of room. Perfect." Daniel opened his protein bar and took a bite. "How'd your molecular physics assignment go?" "You should not be here." "Why not? We study together every day. Makes sense to eat together too." The entire dining hall watched them. Nobody moved. The serving drones hovered in place, uncertain how to process this situation. Rask's claws extended slightly, then retracted. A nervous gesture Daniel had learned to recognize. Other humans will judge you. Your social bonds with your own species will suffer. There aren't any other humans here yet, and when they arrive, they'll have to deal with my choices. Daniel pulled out a granola bar from his bag. You ever try one of these? It's got honey in it. Not sure if your species can eat it, but humans share food with friends. The word hung in the air, friends. Rask's body went completely still. His breathing stopped. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Friends. Yeah, that's what we are, right? We study together. Help each other with assignments, talk about stuff. That's friendship. Drathgar do not have friends. Maybe they just never had the chance. Daniel slid the granola bar across the table. Try it or don't. No pressure. Rask looked at the small package like it contained explosives. His largest hand reached out slowly. Claws retracted fully. He picked up the bar with surprising delicacy and examined it. It will not harm me. If it does, I'll help you get to medical. Rask opened the package and took a small bite. His mandibles worked the unfamiliar texture. It is sweet. My species rarely consumes sweet foods. But you like it. I do not dislike it. Daniel grinned, high praise from a death worlder. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The dining hall slowly returned to normal around them, though many aliens kept glancing their way. Daniel could hear the whispers, the human and the monster, eating together like it was normal. A group of 3 Velans approached. They were reptilian creatures, about Daniel's height, with scales that shifted colors based on their emotions. Currently, their scales showed aggressive red and orange patterns. The leader, identifiable by his larger crest, stopped near their table. Human, you are making a mistake. Daniel swallowed his food. Am I? Befriending a death worlder will only end in tragedy. They are hunters by nature. Eventually, instinct will override whatever restraint he pretends to have. Rask's claws extended. His tail moved slightly. Daniel noticed and spoke quickly. Rask, it's okay. They insult me in front of you. They insult both of us, but getting angry proves them right. Daniel turned to the Velans. Thanks for your concern, but I'm capable of making my own choices about my friends. The Velan leader's crest expanded. Your death world pet will turn on you eventually, probably eat you. Do not say we did not warn you. He's not a pet, he's a person, and he's got more self-control than you apparently have manners. The Velan hissed, we are trying to help you, human. No, you're trying to justify your fear by pretending it's concern. Big difference. One of the other Velans whispered something. The leader nodded and turned back to Daniel. You will see. When he hurts someone, remember that we warned you. They walked away, scales still showing angry colors. Other students watched the confrontation with obvious interest. Some nodded in agreement with the Velans. Others looked thoughtful, perhaps reconsidering their own assumptions. Daniel returned to his lunch. His hands shook slightly. Confrontation always made him nervous, but he kept his voice steady. Sorry about that. You defended me. Rask's voice carried confusion. Why? Because they were wrong, and because that's what friends do. I could have defended myself. I know, but sometimes it means more when someone else stands up for you, shows you're not alone. Daniel met Rask's eyes. You're not alone anymore. Get used to it. Rask sat quietly for a long moment. Then he did something Daniel had never seen. The Drathkar's armor plates shifted slightly, creating a sound like distant thunder. Daniel would learn later this was how his species expressed deep emotion. On my world we have a concept, Rask said slowly. Pack bond. It is rare, sacred. When a Drathkar bonds with another, they protect each other until death. I did not think it was possible with another species. Earth has something similar. We call it friendship, loyalty, family by choice. I have never had this before. Neither have I really, not until I met you. Daniel held up his water container. To new experiences. Rask picked up his own drinking vessel carefully. To new experiences. They tapped their containers together. Around them, the dining hall continued its normal chaos. But at that corner table, two beings from Death World sat together in comfortable companionship, creating something neither of their species thought possible. A small Quillan student, barely 3 feet tall, watched from across the room. She had been terrified of Rask since the semester began. But seeing the Drathkar share food with the human, seeing them laugh together, something in her mind shifted. Maybe fear was a choice, not a requirement. Later that night, someone would sabotage the environmental controls in the residential sector. The Velans would claim ignorance. Rask and Daniel would face their biggest test yet. But for now, in this moment, they simply enjoyed their lunch together, unaware that their friendship was about to save lives. Exams were approaching, and the library had become Daniel and Rask's second home. They occupied the third-floor East Wing study area almost every evening. Other students learned to use different floors, giving the human and Drathkar their space without complaint. Tonight, holographic textbooks floated around them, displaying everything from quantum mechanics to xenobiology. Daniel sat at his desk, stylus moving rapidly across his datapad. Rask sprawled on the floor, his massive form taking up most of the available space, 3 of his arms manipulating different study materials simultaneously. The section on safe species interactions makes no sense, Rask rumbled, his frustration evident. It lists protocols for approaching every known species, except mine. Daniel looked up from his notes. What do you mean? There is no protocol for safely interacting with Drathkar. The textbook simply states, maintain maximum distance, avoid direct contact, alert security if approached. Rask's tail thumped against the floor. The irony is profound. I am studying how to interact with others while the manual teaches others to avoid me. That's garbage. Daniel closed his own work and moved to sit on the floor near Rask, not too close but within comfortable conversation distance. You're the most careful person I know. You think about every movement, every word. Most beings just act without thinking. Careful because I must be. One mistake and I confirm every fear others have about my species. Rask's claws retracted completely, a gesture Daniel now understood meant vulnerability. Do you know how many desks I have broken in my academic career? How many doorframes I have damaged? How many items I have accidentally crushed? I'm guessing a lot. 47 desks, 23 doors, hundreds of smaller objects, datapads, writing implements, furniture. My strength is constant. The galaxy is built for beings much more fragile than me. Rask's 6 eyes dimmed slightly. I live in fear of my own body. Every moment of every day I calculate force, measure distance, control instinct, and still I break things. Daniel listened without interrupting. He had learned that sometimes Rask needed to express what he had kept silent for years. The worst part is knowing I could hurt someone, Rask continued. Not intentionally, never intentionally, but an accident, a moment of lost control, and I could kill a classmate. That fear never leaves me. But you haven't. In all your years here, you've never hurt anyone. Because I never allow myself to be in situations where I might. I maintain distance. I isolate. I refuse to participate in physical activities or group projects that require close proximity. Rask's armor plates shifted, making that thunder sound again. And I am so tired of being alone. Daniel pulled his knees up to his chest, thinking, can I tell you something about Earth? Always. Humans weren't always the dominant species on our planet. For most of our history, we were prey. Lions, tigers, bears, snakes, insects, diseases, everything tried to kill us. We were slower than most predators, weaker than most competitors. Our teeth and nails were pathetic weapons. Yet you survived. We did better than survive. We figured out that our real strength wasn't physical, it was mental and social. We learned to work together, to communicate, to adapt, and most importantly, we learned control. Daniel looked directly at Rask. My species is terrifying in our own way. We're persistent hunters who never give up. We invented weapons that can destroy entire planets. We can convince ourselves to commit atrocities in the name of causes we believe in. The capacity for violence in humans is staggering. Rask's eyes focused intently on Daniel. I do not see you as violent. Because I choose not to be. Every day I choose control over instinct, just like you do. Daniel reached out slowly and placed his hand on the floor between them, palm down, fingers spread. You're not dangerous because of what you could do, Rask. You're safe because of what you choose not to do. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing any being can do. Rask stared at Daniel's hand, at the trust implied by that gesture. Slowly, carefully, he extended one claw and placed it next to Daniel's hand. Not touching but close, a bridge between them. Thank you for seeing me as more than my species classification. Thank you for being my friend. They sat like that for several minutes, hands almost touching, comfortable in the silence. The library's environmental systems hummed quietly. Somewhere below them, other students studied in their own groups, laughing and arguing and learning together. Daniel. Yeah. What will happen when other humans arrive at this station? Daniel had been wondering the same thing. What do you mean? You are alone now, but eventually your species will send more students. You will have humans to bond with, others who understand your culture, your humor, your biology. Rask's voice grew quieter. You will not need a Drathkar friend anymore. That's not how friendship works. I don't spend time with you because I have no other options. I spend time with you because I want to. Daniel smiled. Besides, who else is going to help me understand quantum mechanics? You explain it way better than the professor. That is only because my brain processes mathematical concepts differently. See, that's exactly what I need. A study partner who thinks differently than me, makes me see things from new angles. Daniel stretched and yawned. We should probably call it a night. Exams in 2 days and we need rest. Rask gathered his materials with practiced care, each movement deliberate and controlled. Same time tomorrow. Absolutely, and hey, Rask. Yes. Stop worrying about whether you deserve friendship. You do, trust me on that. They left the library together, walking through the quiet station corridors. Security cameras tracked their movement as they always did when Rask was present, but neither of them cared. They had found something precious in each other: acceptance, understanding, and genuine companionship. Neither of them knew that in just 2 days, their bond would be tested in ways they could not imagine. The residential sector's environmental system was already beginning to fail, sabotaged by someone who wanted to prove that Death Worlders could not be trusted. And when the emergency began, Rask and Daniel would have to show the entire station what true friendship looked like. But for now, they simply walked together in comfortable silence, two beings from the harshest worlds in the galaxy, finding peace in each other's company. The alarm cut through the peaceful evening like a knife. Red lights flashed throughout the station, and Daniel nearly dropped his datapad as the emergency siren blared directly above his dorm room. All students evacuate to emergency shelters. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Daniel grabbed his emergency kit and rushed into the corridor. Other students poured from their rooms, some still in sleep clothes. Panic filled the air as people pushed toward the emergency exits. What happened? Someone shouted. Environmental failure in residential sector B. Structural collapse. Daniel's blood went cold. Residential sector B, that was where the Velans lived. The same Velans who had confronted him in the dining hall about Rask. He pushed against the crowd, moving towards sector B instead of away from it. A Quillan student grabbed his arm. Wrong way, human. We evacuate. Someone might need help. Daniel pulled free and kept running. He found Rask in the main corridor, being detained by 3 security officers. The Drathkar stood perfectly still, arms raised to show he was not a threat, while the officers argued with each other. We cannot let it near the disaster site. Protocol requires all able-bodied individuals to assist in rescue operations. It is a death worlder, too dangerous. I can help, Rask said calmly, though Daniel could see the tension in every plate of his armor. I am stronger than your rescue drones. Daniel ran up to them. What's the situation? One officer turned. Human student, you should be evacuating. There has been structural collapse in Sector B. The environmental system failed catastrophically, causing support beams to weaken and fall. Anyone trapped? The officer hesitated, then nodded. We have reports of students pinned under debris, but our rescue equipment cannot reach them safely. The area is too unstable. Daniel looked at Rask. Rask looked back. They both understood immediately what needed to happen. He can do it, Daniel said. He's strong enough to lift those beams. Absolutely not. A Drathkar entering an emergency situation could make things worse. Or he could save lives. Your choice. Make it fast because people are dying while we argue. The security officer's face went through several expressions. Finally, he spoke into his communicator. Command, requesting permission to utilize Drathkar student for rescue operations. The response came quickly. Permission denied, too dangerous. Rask's tail lashed once, the only sign of his frustration. Then I will face disciplinary action. I am going to help regardless of permission. He pushed past the officers before they could react. Daniel followed. Behind them, someone shouted orders, but they ignored it. Sector B was chaos. Smoke filled the corridors from electrical fires. Sparking cables hung from the ceiling like deadly vines. And in the central common area, a massive support beam had collapsed, crushing furniture and trapping students beneath. Daniel could hear screaming, crying, calls for help in a dozen different languages. There, Rask pointed with one claw. I hear breathing under that beam, 3 individuals. They ran forward. The beam was easily 20 feet long and made of reinforced steel. It had fallen across what used to be a study area. Daniel could see movement underneath, but the gap was too small for anyone to escape. Rask positioned himself at the center of the beam. He placed all 4 arms underneath and began to lift. His armor plates ground together as muscles strained. The beam shifted, rising slowly. Daniel, get them out. Daniel dove under the beam. 3 Velen students huddled there, one with an obvious broken arm, another bleeding from a head wound, the third in shock. Daniel grabbed the injured one first. Come on, we have to move now. The Velens saw Daniel and hesitated. Then they saw Rask holding the massive beam above them, his entire body trembling with effort. The Drathkar who they had mocked, who they had feared, was saving their lives. Move, Daniel shouted. He can't hold that forever. They scrambled out. Daniel pulled the injured ones to safety, then went back for debris blocking their path. Behind him, Rask's breathing became labored. His armor began to crack under the strain. Almost done, Daniel called. Just a few more seconds. The last Velen crawled free. Daniel turned to tell Rask to drop the beam and saw the problem. More debris had shifted during the rescue. If Rask let go now, the entire section would collapse, potentially killing others still trapped in adjacent areas. Get to safety, Rask commanded through gritted teeth. Not without you. I must stabilize this section or the collapse will spread. Go, now. Daniel looked around frantically. Emergency drones were arriving, bringing support equipment, but they needed time to set up, time Rask might not have. Rask, you drop that beam and run on my signal, understand? The structure will fail. Let it fail. You're more important than a building. We'll handle it together. Daniel grabbed a loose support cable and began wrapping it around a nearby intact beam. It was not enough to hold the weight, but it might buy them seconds. On three, Daniel said, 1, 2, 3. Rask released the beam and lunged backward. The structure groaned and shifted, but Daniel's jury-rigged support held just long enough for emergency drones to get positioning equipment in place. The beam settled at a safer angle, preventing further collapse. Rask crashed to the floor, his armor cracked in multiple places. He struggled to breathe, having pushed his body past normal limits. Daniel ran to him. "Medic, I need a medic here." "I am functional," Rask wheezed. "The others?" "Safe because of you. All of them are safe because of you." Medical teams swarmed the area, treating the injured. The three Velens Daniel had pulled from the debris were being loaded onto stretchers. One of them, the leader who had confronted Daniel in the dining hall, stared at Rask with wide eyes. "You saved us, after what we said to you." Rask's voice was weak but clear. "Daniel taught me what friendship means. I am trying to understand forgiveness." Security officers arrived and stopped when they saw the scene. The Death Worlder they had tried to keep away had just saved multiple lives. The same being they classified as too dangerous to help had risked his own safety for students who had treated him with nothing but contempt. The lead officer approached Daniel and Rask. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I have witnessed in my career." "Probably both," Daniel admitted. "But everyone's alive, that's what matters." They sat together in the destroyed common area, Daniel next to his injured friend, surrounded by the beings Rask had saved. And for the first time since arriving at the station, other students looked at the Drathkar without fear. They saw him clearly, not as a monster, as a hero. The medical bay smelled of antiseptic and alien medicines Daniel could not identify. He sat in a chair that was too large for him, next to a bed that was too small for Rask. The Drathkar lay on reinforced floor padding instead, medical scanners hovering over his cracked armor plates. 3 days had passed since the rescue. Rask's injuries were healing, but slowly. Drathkar biology was resilient, but even they had limits. The doctors said he had pushed himself past what should have been structurally possible for his species. Daniel had not left the medical bay except when nurses physically removed him for mandatory rest periods. He brought his study materials and worked on the floor beside Rask, maintaining their routine even here. "You should be in class," Rask said, his voice stronger now than it had been the first day. "Exams are in 2 days." Already rescheduled, administration gave everyone affected by the incident an extension. Daniel highlighted a passage in his digital textbook. "Besides, someone has to make sure you don't get bored." "I'm accustomed to solitude." "Yeah, well, get unaccustomed. You're stuck with me now." Rask made that thunder sound with his armor plates. Daniel had learned this meant contentment, affection even. "Stuck with you. I find I do not mind this." The medical bay doors opened. Professor Hickstel entered, followed by 3 Velen students. Daniel recognized them immediately, the ones Rask had saved from the collapse. One still wore a cast on his arm. Another had bandages on her head. The third, the leader who had confronted Daniel in the dining hall, carried something in his hands. They stopped a respectful distance from Rask. The Velen scales showed colors Daniel had learned indicated nervousness and shame. Blue and gray swirls mixing with apologetic green. The leader stepped forward. "We came to apologize and to thank you." Rask tried to sit up. Daniel helped him adjust to a more comfortable position. "Apology is unnecessary. You were injured. I helped. This is what anyone would do." "No, not anyone." The Velen scales shifted to deeper blue. "I am sorrow. I said terrible things to you and about you. I judged you as a monster because of your species classification. I was wrong, completely and utterly wrong." The other 2 Velens nodded agreement. One spoke softly. "You saved our lives when you had every reason to leave us. We did not deserve your help. Everyone deserves help when they are in danger, Rask said. This is what Daniel taught me. Sorrel held out what he carried, a small holographic projector. He activated it and an image appeared in the air. It showed Rask lifting the beam, his armor cracking from the strain, his entire body shaking with effort. Daniel positioned beside him, working to stabilize the structure. The moment of their cooperation preserved forever. This footage has spread across the entire Galactic Student Network, Sorrel explained. Millions of beings have watched it. They see what we should have seen from the beginning. You are not defined by your species' history. You are defined by your choices. Another Velen added, the media is calling you the gentle giant. Some are calling for changes to death worlder classifications. There are proposals to judge species by their actions in civilized space, not just by their home world biology. Rask looked at the image floating in the air, at himself risking everything for beings who had treated him with contempt. I did not do this for recognition. We know, Sorrel said. That is why it matters so much. You simply did what was right. He deactivated the projector and set it on the floor near Rask. Please keep this. As a reminder that you changed how the galaxy sees your species, and as our apology for not seeing the truth sooner. The Velens bowed, a gesture of deep respect in their culture, and left. Professor Hicksdell remained. Mr. Rask, Mr. Reed, I also owe you both an apology. Her mandibles clicked nervously. I enforced isolation protocols that were based on fear rather than evidence. I separated you, Rask, because I was afraid of what might happen, not because of anything you had done. You were following regulations, Rask said. Regulations that are wrong. I have submitted a formal proposal to the Galactic Institute administration. No student should be isolated solely because of their species classification, not unless they demonstrate actual dangerous behavior. Hicksdell's compound eyes gleamed. Your friendship has taught me that we have been approaching interspecies education entirely wrong. We separate when we should integrate. We fear when we should understand. After the professor left, Daniel and Rask sat in comfortable silence. Medical equipment beeped softly. Through the windows, they could see students passing by. Many paused to look inside. Some waved. Others held up signs of support written in languages from across the galaxy. Everything is different now, Rask observed. Is that a bad thing? I do not know. For 12 years I have been alone. Now suddenly everyone wants to acknowledge my existence. Rask's 6 eyes focused on Daniel. It is overwhelming. We'll figure it out together. That's what friends do. Friends. Rask tested the word again, like he still could not quite believe it applied to him. Daniel, when I was holding that beam, knowing my armor was breaking, knowing I might not survive, I had a thought. What thought? That it was worth it. Not just to save those students, though that mattered, but because I finally understood what it meant to have something worth protecting. You showed me I could be more than what my biology dictated. You gave me a choice about who I wanted to be. Daniel felt his throat tighten with emotion. You did the same for me. You taught me that strength and gentleness aren't opposites, that the scariest beings can be the kindest ones if given a chance. Rask extended one claw slowly. Daniel reached out and placed his hand against it. The size difference was absurd. Daniel's entire hand barely covered one of Rask's claw tips, but the gesture meant everything. When I am released from medical care, will you still want to study together? Are you kidding? Exams got postponed, which means we have even more time to prepare. Plus, I heard they're removing your isolation desk and giving you a normal seat. You'll need someone to sit next to. I would like that very much. The semester continued. Exams came and went. Daniel and Rask both passed with honors. More importantly, the barriers around Rask's desk were removed. Students began approaching him with questions. Study groups formed that included the Drathkar. The Velens who Rask saved became his advocates, explaining to others that fear was a choice, not a requirement. The dining hall changed too. Daniel and Rask's table slowly gained additional occupants. First, the Quillen student who had watched their initial friendship form. Then others, curious about the human and Drathkar who seemed so comfortable together. Within weeks, their table was full. On graduation day, Daniel stood on stage in robes modified for human proportions. Rask stood beside him in armor polished until it gleamed. They had been asked to speak to the incoming class about integration and friendship across species boundaries. Daniel spoke about seeing past surface appearances. Rask spoke about choosing compassion over instinct. Together, they presented an image the galaxy had never seen before. A human and Drathkar, side by side, equal in every way that mattered. In the audience, hundreds of species watched. Some cried. Others recorded the moment to share with their home worlds. All of them understood they were witnessing history. After the ceremony, as students celebrated and families gathered, Daniel and Rask found a quiet observation deck overlooking the planet below. "What happens now?" Rask asked. "We got accepted to the Advanced Research Institute. Together, because we requested to remain partners." "Partners, I like that word." "Me too." Daniel looked at his friend, his companion, his family by choice. "Thank you for taking a chance on the weird human who wasn't afraid of you." Rask's claws retracted fully, his armor plates shifting in that thunder of contentment. "Thank you for showing me that monsters are made by loneliness and heroes are made by connection. You saved me long before I saved anyone else." They stood together as the station rotated beneath them, two beings from the harshest worlds in the galaxy, proving that friendship could bridge any divide. The fear beast and the human who cuddled him had become something neither expected, proof that kindness was stronger than instinct, and that family was defined not by species, but by choice.